What's up, everybody? Okay. I don't know why, but I am particularly fired up today. And it may have absolutely nothing to do with the video we're about to watch some of and talk about. Just feeling like I have extra energy today. And then I was driving around, and when I drive around, I typically that's when I consume my YouTube stuff, not watching while I'm driving, I swear. But I just listen to most of the stuff. Most of it's podcasts and whatnot. And today I put a Hiller video on, his most recent one. And uh the gist of it was that the claim for fittest on earth this year doesn't apply to James or Tia. And I don't want to misrepresent the video, but basically because the test was altered and other results could have been could have come from other tests, that the test wasn't complete enough to deserve the title of fittest on earth. So I personally think that that's probably where a lot of people's mind went to after the games. Lazarus situation aside, obviously, we're not going to get into that much in this. Just the test itself, the idea of the title of fittest on earth and what that means, what it represents, and how we actually can lay claim to it. So, what's up, everybody? That's what we're going to do today. Augustus first. Yep, you made it first. Good job. And second for keeping it real. What's up, Travis? Kenneth, I didn't watch Hiller's video. Should I? Well, we're going to watch Hiller's video. We're going to watch it sped up. We're going to watch most of it. And as he makes great points, he actually does a great job of laying out his argument. And frankly, I could take his side of this argument as well. And I think it would be the easier side to take. So I'm going to try to intentionally take the more challenging side, but I also happen to believe this side more so than the other. There's some nuance to it that I think it's overlooked. Let's see. Extra sloppy. My only take when Hiller said that is that I don't think as many people care about the sacred term fittest on earth as he thinks. I think some people do care about it. I think it's a crazy title to hold. You're right. Probably a lot of people don't, but if we're going to put that title up on a pedestal, I think that's kind of what the debate's about. If we can use it, in my opinion, if we should be using it at all, based on the CrossFit Games in general. So we've kind of accepted that as the title of the winner of the games every year. Maybe it's appropriate, maybe it's not. Maybe that's something we can talk about. Hello. Did I watch Froning's Mayhem podcast? If you're talking about the one they just put out today, I listened to the first 30 minutes of it while I was driving to an appointment. I didn't get to finish it. I really appreciated their point of views to start it out. I probably will finish the rest of it tomorrow, but I haven't started it. Okay, what we all came here for, we're going to dive into it. So like I said, we're going to play Hiller's video. I'm going to try to speed it up a bit. So Hiller may sound a little different than normal. And we will watch, and then we'll kind of pause it if we have points to make with all this. Okay, off we go. If the volume needs to be adjusted on the video, please let me know.
Yo, I'm choosing my battles. I'm forming arguments, and this is the first one that I want to talk about. The 2024 CrossFit Games did not crown the fittest on earth. What did you say? There are people who went to a competition and won the competition, sure, but it is not the competition of the fittest on earth. That is, unless you go to 10 years ago.
Men and women competing here today have legitimate claim to the title fittest men and women on earth.
Listen to Greg Glassman say that the reason that we can do this is the same right that the Lakers are the best basketball team on the planet.
By the same rights and logic to the Lakers, the Steelers, the Penguins, and the Phillies are the best basketball team, football team, hockey team, baseball team on earth.
And I go, okay, sure. You have the NBA championship. You've got the best teams playing against one another in the championship, and the Lakers win, and they are the best basketball team. But with that same logic, you could have had the Open, you could have had the quarterfinals, you could have had the semifinals, you could have brought 80 athletes to the CrossFit Games, and then you could have had them shoot pool. You could have had them go to a bowling alley, and it's like, oh, you shot a 300, you're the fittest on earth. And how can we make that claim? Well, we defined the methodology, and we did all this fitness, and then you would hear people come out of the woodwork.
Basically saying the test matters.
Yeah, the strength of how quickly you're able to throw the ball and make the pins explode.
Wow.
The coordination. It doesn't matter what you think. The only comparable thing that will really make sense to a whole lot of people, I think, would have to be Brian Johnson, the Liver King. Remember that guy? Everybody thought, not everybody, there are a lot of people who saw right through it, but everybody thought that dude looked the way that he looked and did the things that he did because he ate liver.
Wow.
And organs and got rid of all of his
this isn't really
computers and stuff.
as important to my argument.
Ice bath. Okay, sit in the sun 14 hours a day.
We'll let him
It's okay.
chat.
He's fine.
And then you find out that he takes $10,000 a month in growth hormone, amongst other things. And you're like, oh, duh. And then you're thinking, damn, I really wasted a whole lot of money on supplements, desiccated organ meat. And that's one of the feelings that I'm left with the 2024 CrossFit Games. Tia Toomey, she wins every single year, whatever. It would have been the same thing had Matt Fraser been here. It would have been Tia and Matt, and then everybody.
Well, first of all, it's not whatever, because if we make any claims that this test was not legitimate enough to hold the title, but previous years are legitimate enough, then we have, maybe one point there is that the fittest woman, Tia, still won regardless of the change to the test, right? So that, that could be a small point. James O'Rourke, they were still the Super Bowl champions, maybe not the best team in football. Yeah. So, and I think part of sports in general. Okay. You're going to send me down a tangent, but let's do it. Let's do it real quick. So I think one of the biggest issues with this whole argument of crowning the fittest on earth is that the tests that we use each year that Dave Castro lays out, Boz 1 year, Dave all the rest of the years, is kind of our accepted method to decide that this is acceptable and the winner of this will be the fittest on earth. We've accepted that as a community, but the problem is there is absolutely no definition to what needs to be in that test. We know it needs to be balanced. We know all the components of CrossFit. We know the methodology. We know all that, but there isn't a defined amount of squats that need to be tested. There isn't a set amount of weight. There isn't thresholds within this test that are able to be defined because we have to test so many things. So each year the test changes. We know that, but each year we accept the test as valid for the most part. Of course, each year we also have a lot of criticisms for the test. So we spend time online or within our gyms, whatever, talking about workouts we like, don't like. Half the people beat up the open this year. Half the people beat up quarterfinals, but people love semifinals. So we're always talking about how much we like the test, whether it's how enjoyable the workouts are, how effective they are in finding the fittest, whatever. So that debate goes all the way up the scale, all the way to the games. And we've, again, accepted that Dave's test is what we're going to use to find the fittest, and we crown them with that title. So talking about sports here, playing one game, it can go either direction. You have two highly matched teams. That's the excitement of sports. An exhibition, anything can happen. If you move more in the direction of calling this a test, the test has to be, foolproof to the sense that we find the answer at the end, right? And I'm not sure that that's the case, because the CrossFit Games has become more of an exhibition and sort of a sport than a test, because we can't define the parameters. So again, identity crisis a little bit. I've been talking about this for years, that the CrossFit Games have in general. Is it a sporting exhibition or is it a test? A test needs to be extremely rigorous, repeatable, not predictable necessarily, but it has to be very defined. A test has to be defined. An exhibition can be anything. It can be the unknown, the unknowable. We can just throw people out there in anywhere from 6 to 13 events. Whoever comes out on top gets to be the winner. And the games has kind of looked like that for a lot of years. It started out as a few events that one of them was pulled out of a hopper. It wasn't even designed to be this well-balanced test. One of the workouts was literally pulled out of a hopper at random and then used as one of the tests. So to say that as the sport was developing in early years that it was well-balanced is wrong. Like, we have the every second counts year, the year that Kalipa won with that squat clean workout at the very end. We legitimize Kalipa's claim, I think, for the most part, as a community, that his win is legit. The tests were not a legit test of fitness if you want to be really into the details, nitty gritty, and break it down across those tests. It wasn't enough. The time domains were all super short. And of course, this has evolved over the years into the test that it is now, which is usually 11 to 13 scores across 4 days or whatever. But there's still no definition on the parameters that it has to be that way. We've just accepted it because it's slowly evolved to that. So the test itself, it's hard to even give true legitimacy to the test. We just kind of accept it at face value.
But you'd be like, oh, we found the fittest. It's like, no, stop it. Thank you, James Sprague, for winning the CrossFit Games. Thank you, James Sprague, for putting that in your Instagram profile. Fittest on earth. Before the semifinals this year, I was listening to Taylor Self talk with J.R. Howell on Shut Up and Scribble, and I heard him say that he cannot look at the workouts in a certain light. He doesn't care what's coming out of the pipeline because he's got to do it anyway. He's got to do the deadlift.
Sorry, fair question here. Fair question. Marcus Wallace, if the CrossFit Games happen again tomorrow with a full roster, would you pick James Sprague to win? If you say no, does it mean you think he is not the fittest on earth? That's a great question. The part of the question I have to ask back is, do I have the information that I have now based on the results of the tests that they tested? If so, I probably think he's going to win those tests again, I would say. If I have that information, but the athletes don't, and they're going through it again in the same exact situation, the same mentality, same everything. Yeah, I'm going to say that repeating it is going to produce the same results. Yeah, but so if it's a full roster and the tests are different, like let's say it's a brand new test, I don't know. So again, the title of the fittest on earth is something we've just come to accept as the winner of the CrossFit Games. But the CrossFit Games can change. You could program it 100 different ways, and it's probably tweaked 100 different times before the final product's put out there. And then again, we're just accepting the product that's out there. There isn't any checks and balances as to whether it's actually a legitimate test that we want to consider to be given to the title of the fittest. So we just give that title to the person who wins the games. So I don't know, like picking James tomorrow, maybe. Yeah, I might if I were doing the same workouts. If not, then hey, what I would say is that because it's CrossFit is not quite a test, like we talked about a few minutes ago, and it is more of an event. Each day the athlete has to show up and perform, right? So at a certain level of fitness, once we're at the highest point of fitness, people are really similar. Sure, they have strengths and weaknesses, but their fitness levels at the tippy top, or top 10 guys, top 10 girls, whatever, are similar in some sense. Obviously, there's some outliers like Tia on the women's side, but you could compare the next 2 through 7 in a lot of ways and call them like similarly balanced. And then it comes down to the programming, what comes out. But again, programming has been biased from year to year, and we just accept that sometimes a bias happens and somebody wins and that person gets the crown of fittest on earth.
There's the rowing and all the hinging, and he can't tell you whether or not he thinks it's a biased test or an unbiased test because he's going to go do it, make it to the CrossFit Games, wherever he wants. I heard James Sprague the other day on Be Friendly Fitness.
Are you the fittest man on earth?
I think I am the fittest man on earth, and I believe that.
And like I said, you should believe that as the athlete.
I think a lot of people have been debating this question, and I love that it's a big talk.
Good. He likes it. This is good. And I like James.
People want a surprise, but people want a surprise under their circumstances.
The rest of this video is kind of dedicated to what circumstances I'm talking about here. And I think James talks a little bit here about what he's getting at.
I mean, one is the wrong word. I don't think anyone predicted me to be in the top. I think 0 people put me in first on the Heat 1 app.
You didn't even put yourself in first.
No.
You yourself didn't pick yourself.
That's pretty interesting, right?
There's always
But
something
again,
or some circumstance.
you don't know
happens
what's
each year,
coming
right?
out
Last year, Roman getting
for
hurt,
events.
so
They're not all
Adler won
announced.
because of that, right? Adler was the fittest man on earth. Justin being there without Matt Frazier. Was Justin not the fittest man on earth because Matt Frazier didn't show up?
I don't care about your mental clarity. I don't care about who you were competing against or how you were competing against them.
There's so many things that people will try and take you down with.
Now, this is jargon. This does not matter. The entire video I'm about to put in front of you is not to take you down. It's got nothing to do with you. There's a competition that you won, and you deserve the check because you did the things in the place and you beat the people. And it's got nothing to do with you.
No, dude, I worked really hard for that. And for you to try and take that away, it's kind of a bummer. But it doesn't bring me down.
And when I hear this, I just think that not everybody worked really, really hard all year. This is another one of those vague, doesn't matter statements.
But if you want to believe that I didn't win the CrossFit Games because of I didn't mentally have a struggle this weekend, you're completely wrong.
Yeah, it's got nothing to do with it. My take has 0 to do with that.
So I went out there and I put on the best show that I possibly could. And I put every ounce of effort into each event.
He executed.
So yeah.
That is a perfect parlay into
Everything
my point.
he
Why
could
cannot
do,
say that
he
you are the
did.
best man on earth? Because you did pour yourself into those
That's
events.
important.
Those events. What you had in front of you in that competition, which was not a test for the fittest on earth. It was a fitness competition. That's it. And for everybody else, rabbits out of the hat. Like the quarter trick in the freaking movie Click with Adam Sandler. And then 40 years later, Adam Sandler freaks out.
How you do this stupid trick?
I've always known.
I've always known.
And we're having one of those moments right now in CrossFit. How can you just remove 2 tests? I know how you can. I know why you had to. But when you do that thing, you no longer have the test of fitness. The test is the test. If you want to go back.
Okay, so this is where I have to start pushing back big time. So the test is the test, right? We've accepted that the test of fitness each year that gets put out for the games crowns the fittest on earth. But the test is never just the test. That's the problem. So because Dave had at one point a product he was going to execute on the field or in the competition and the product changed, it doesn't mean that the test necessarily gets better or worse. This is one of the concepts that people need to understand. The test itself is ambiguous in the sense that we're just accepting Dave's opinion that the well-roundedness and the non-bias is going to be there. But that's not ever the case because we talk about the fact that these tests favor the big athlete here, favor the small athlete here, and they don't always come out equal. Sometimes there's more strength in gymnastics or whatever. So the test had to change because of the parameters of the weekend, right? No one's going to argue that, something should have changed after what happened. But the fact of the matter is, we don't know if taking 2 of those pieces out makes the test more legitimate or less legitimate. There's no way to know because there's no parameters on the test to establish what the definition is. We don't know. We're just speculating that more tests are better. A lot of people say that, more scores are better because the fittest will continue to, put their place there. But that's not always the case because you can do more tests that are biased in one direction or the other. Now, later in this video, Andrew's going to try to lay it out, and he's actually going to make his own version of the games, which I actually applaud him for. I think he did a great job trying to fix it, but this will lead to another point later on. But the test is never just the test. The test is a concept that Dave puts out there, and that concept changes. There have been multiple years where events have been canceled due to weather changes. Oh, this didn't play out the way I think it did. I have to make this modification. I have to change this. The runs distance is different. Oh, the weights didn't work out right. The test gets changed frequently. Yes, we missed 2 of the elements this year, but again, we don't know. There's no proof that makes the test more or less legitimate. It's still just the test that's going to have to be executed by the athletes who continued on that weekend, period. You can critique it till the forever, but you don't have any more legitimacy with your argument than somebody else. That's the problem. That's the problem with this argument overall.
Back to the analogy that is the basketball teams. You put them in the NBA finals and you give them a women's basketball with like 29.5, what is it, millimeters, centimeters, inches? I don't know, but it's 29.5 on the basketball. And that's the size of the basketball that they use to play with. All of a sudden you give them a women's basketball and who knows who's going to win. You got the 2 best teams and you're going to crown the best, but you've changed the major thing they're using, or you shrink the size of the basketball hoop. I don't know what's going to happen. No one knows what's going to happen. You change something integral to the sport. You have baseball players a softball.
I don't like this argument at all. So sports are defined. This is what I'm telling you. Sports that are played professionally are defined. We have regulation size basketballs, regulation size hoops, regulation baseballs. They don't use softballs. You're not changing it. CrossFit the test is not defined. It never has been and never will be. It will not be defined. So a change to it the day before an event is no different than a change to the test a month before the event, or a change to the event the morning of because the demo team found something that wasn't right and Dave makes a change on the fly. A change is a change, and you have no way to measure how big of a change disrupt something or not. You don't know if, just changing one movement is okay. That's fine. If you change one movement in this workout, that's fine. The test is still good. Like, we'll still crown the fittest. If you take out 7 events, and it's no good anymore. We're only testing 5 scores. We can't crown the fittest. There's no way to define that, especially when you look back over the years and you see that some of the CrossFit Games entire weekends was only a few events. And that's all it was a few events. And we still made that legitimate in some cases. Even in the Home Depot Center before StubHub in California, there weren't that many workouts that we were scoring. And we were still perfectly fine calling Graham Holmberg the fittest, Rich the fittest. Every year, as the athletes got better, we did add some volume. We add complexity, skill, all kinds of things to these tests. But do we need all that to actually find the fittest? I don't know. And again, kind of circling back to another point, I know I'm rambling. I'm going to ramble. Like I said, I'm full of energy today. On the guy side, things are close. Before going into this weekend, that we all agree there was probably 8 to 10 guys that could snatch the title. And even athletes were talking about it. And they would all say, depending on the programming, right? On the ladies' side, there was never a question. Nobody picked against Tia. Nobody, right? So we already knew no matter what the tests were that came out, how many they were, how heavy they were, how much running, we didn't care. Tia's the fittest. We already knew that we're going to pick her. On the men's side, we knew there was going to be this whole leaderboard up and down the whole entire time across 8 guys, 8 to 10 guys we picked. And we knew, depending on the programming that Dave picked, for whatever reason, we don't know, that these guys were going to finish in different places. Everybody had a different guy on the top, right? There were some people going for Roman, Ricky, Jeff, and others. Dallin was picked here and there. I picked Medeiros. There was a whole bunch of other people that we thought could take that title. And, and James won it. And so that we knew that was going to be programming dependent, and not only programming dependent, but dependent on how well you execute when you show up, which is so much a part of this test or this event that's hard to call it a test. Because if it was a test, you would think the athlete could replicate that workout, that score, that time, that weight each time. But that's not the case in this. You actually have to be a competitor and show up and execute at your one attempt. There's no redos like the open or quarterfinals. So again, if we're crowning the fittest on earth. We're considering all these aspects and what that is. We've accepted that is the title of the winner of the CrossFit Games. We've accepted that. We've accepted that there's extreme variables in programming for years, not just this year, for years and years, extreme variables. And we've accepted that different people can win based on the workouts that are put out there. And we have no control over them, right? We've accepted all those things. And then we've accepted that the winner of this competition will be crowned the fittest on earth. So after all that, I have a very hard time of going back and ripping apart the details of the test, even though 2 tests were removed and saying it's no longer legitimate. You're just deciding when or not to use the definition we already picked. It's not fair. It's not fair. If you're questioning legitimacy of this year's test to call the fittest on earth, then you're calling into question every previous test that ever had a change before this. And if you're doing that, then you're stripping the title from everybody. And now we're just finding out who the best CrossFitter is, which I'm cool with. You could call it that too. I'm totally cool with that definition, but you can't pick and choose where you're going to draw your line because the line doesn't exist. We're making this up as we go. That's the problem.
And everything's different now. For the longest time, I thought that there was some crazy mechanism of action that coming to the final point in time where you have the test of fitness. There's this many contractions hinging, there's this many contractions lunging, pulling, upper body, pushing, pressing, gymnastics, aerobic to anaerobic, to lactate, threshold pieces. And all of a sudden, it's all off the board after the 2024 season. And if you want to reconfigure the fact that they had to remove the 2 events because Lazarus death on event 1, yeah, I get it. The next day, Dave does his daily review where he says that they removed rope climbs from the workout for 2 reasons.
The first event was heavily modified. And it was heavily modified. Some people asked why we modified it from the 5 rope climbs. The 5 rope climb version was a very different event. What did you say? What I mean is much longer. I mean, it's 10 more rope climbs. And the version we were actually going to do at the games was going to be from the seated position, seated to the top.
The more important reason was the broadcast schedule.
We had to move the time cap from 30 minutes because of all these other schedule changes going on. And because Farrington Field, because it was on ESPN2, because that window couldn't change.
What's up,
Everything
Chris?
else had to condense. It couldn't expand or stay the same. And so we then created.
So again, like they decided whether this had anything to do with, whatever the reason, they decided to change the rope climb workout. They made it very different, right? Less reps and a much more simple variation of it. That sort of stuff happens every year. Every year, the test changes. And so that change affects certain athletes that are better at the seated legless climb for higher reps, and it changes those who are not as good. Now they can make up time elsewhere. That changes a lot of points on the leaderboard. Lupe, it was still an incomplete test because the scorecard had 200 less points up for grabs. Modifications happen, number of events vary for sure, but having a canvas for the test then cutting out pieces. Well, that's what I'm saying, Lupe, is they've had the process of building the test has had multiple canvases that just continue to change. Dave scribbled some shit on a whiteboard 9 months ago and continued to modify. It was like, okay, I'm happy with this now. Let's test it. All right, change it. Okay, okay. This has to change because of time constraints. This has to change because of this. This didn't work out with the demo team. This has to get cut. For whatever reason, the timing of ESPN made them change rope climb workouts, and he wanted them to finish it. Maybe it had to do with Lazarus' death. Maybe it didn't. I don't know. But the point is, it's always a canvas. It's always a moving target. It always has been. There's no defined. Once we've decided, for whatever reason, once we've decided the final test has been completed, whoever's on the top of the leaderboard, we hand the crown to. That's how we've always done it. That's how we've always done it. Clock, if they ran all the events, why not say it still needs 2 more events to be complete? But why? But sure, you can. You could make up 2 other events. You could throw in 2 other 100-point tests. Hopefully they put some thought into them before they add them in. But you don't need whatever it was, 12 or 1,300 total points awarded across those events in first place. Like you don't need all of them. You don't, because we've seen in previous years that we don't use all those tests. Now, I do get the argument that he had a vision, it was changed. But again, I can't emphasize this enough. An unfortunate circumstance caused him to cut those 2 events, right? But other circumstances in the past, in previous games, have caused him to cancel events too. We had an event that changed due to, or movements that changed in the event due to weather, right? In Madison years ago. We've had endless tweaks on weights, distances, and other things in events the day of, morning of, whatever, day before with demo team things. So there was a canvas he brought to the games and he had to change it. Okay. At the end of the weekend, we decided this event's the last event. Whoever's on top wins. My point is the test is undefined. So you can't just say, I need 200 more points. It doesn't matter. That it's not been part of the definition of fitness and finding the fittest, a certain amount of points. That's not in the definition. It's just something we came up with, and it changes constantly.
Created 25-minute block with 20-minute cap.
What's more important, finding the fittest on earth or fitting the broadcast schedule? And then the second point had to do with something along the lines of everybody would be butting up against the time cap.
It's just
and
a
they wanted to get
sporting
people
event.
to finish the workout.
Tested it at the last moment this morning and realized that the testing athletes were not going to finish under the 20-minute time cap. So then at the last minute, like all this morning, like all right before the event started, I told our team, I'm like, hey, I want every individual to be able to finish this event. I want to
See, there you go. Dave tested it the morning of the event. He tested it the morning of the event, and he changed it because he wants people to be able to finish. He said, like, he didn't even know until the morning of the event. And then he went, oh shit, like no one's getting through all these seated rope climbs. Like nobody. It's whatever. Kenneth Delap. Exactly. It's like saying Ben Smith only won because Rich didn't compete. Right. So Ben Smith doesn't get the title of fittest on earth because Rich wasn't there. I agree with that point completely. Ben Smith won. Rich decided not to compete. Maybe he could have beat Ben, but we will never know. He didn't show up. He did something else. That's cool. Asymmetric ears. I'm okay with what Hiller said as long as it applies to 2020. Yeah, I mean, completely different parameters altogether, right? You're used to one test to find the fittest, and now there's an online variation that qualifies 5 people to do an insane amount of tests in a very weird, different setting than we've ever seen before at Dave's Ranch. Like we're just going to accept that test too. It's fine. It had to change because of COVID. It's fine though. Lupe, how many events it was intended to have? I call that complete. Again, I think the bigger concept that's being missed is it doesn't matter how many events were intended. It doesn't matter. At one point, he may have written the games to have 11. At another point, he may have added something that he liked and made it 12, and then again to make it 13 events. And then he decided, oh, you know what? This doesn't fit. I'm going to move this workout over here, and I'm cutting this event. I'm back down to 12. The target is moving. The target's moving until we say stop. Yeah, it's blurry lines. Okay, you do get it. Sorry. Didn't mean to insult you.
a few to finish. And so we dropped the reps down to 3.
So you remove the rope climbs. It's like, aren't the rope climbs important? Weren't there 5 rope climbs there every
They're
single time for a
important.
reason? And also, if you remove them, is it going
To an extent that we decide they're important.
Work out the event, the freaking fittest on earth at the end of the day. What if somebody in 28th place at that point in that workout is an amazing finish, and all of a sudden Dallin Pepper moves up the leaderboard or down the leaboard the other side? I don't know. We don't know. It doesn't matter.
Right.
I did think that everything like that was important to the test. And who knows what else was changed? But let's take out the fact that things were changed and just look at the top of the men's leaderboard in particular. All these dudes over 6 feet tall,
Let 'em go
over
for a little
220 pounds. And then you look at the history of the fittest men on earth, and they're 5'9", 5'10". I'm thinking Rich Froning, I'm thinking Ben Smith, and then you got Matt Fraser, who's like 5'6". You got Graham Holmberg, you got Jason Kalipa, who doesn't count. But although he was 5'9", it was way back in the time where there was like 3 or 4 workouts. You telling me that Justin Medeiros of 2021 and 2022 wouldn't have finished in the top 5 of this year's CrossFit Games? How can you have that avatar of the fittest on earth, 5'9", 200 pounds or so, 195, and not have that sort of like a phenotype of person at the top of the freaking top 3? Sure, maybe Fikowski wins the CrossFit Games as someone who's 215 pounds and 6'2" or whatever he is. But in the top 3, you should still see someone of about the same height and weight, because that's what we come to expect. But you don't see one of those until, I don't know, what is it, Ricky in 7th with 179 centimeters? I know he's my height. What am I talking about? Ricky Gerard in 7th, the first person under 6 feet tall. Everyone's 5'11". They're 6 feet tall. Don't even get me started on the women's side. Emily Rolfe in 3rd. Yeah, she's fit. Bethany Flores is fit, but they finished 27th and 32nd on the freaking clean ladder. So it was a light CrossFit Games, especially so for the women. And when it comes to the men,
sometimes biases happen. Go back and examine all of them.
Through the height of the men at the top of the leaderboard, the weight of the men at those heights. That same documentary where Greg talks about the Lakers, how they're the best basketball team. They have the right to say so because they are the NBA. We are CrossFit, so we have the right to say we're the fittest on earth. There's all of this future talk.
The definition of fitness hasn't been changed, but the level of fitness has been significantly raised.
And sure, we had the freestanding handstand push-ups.
The ceiling for what humans are capable of is going up, and it's continuing to go higher because of the games and because of CrossFit.
I'll try to make this point quick. So like part of fitness is being able to express and execute your fitness, right? So we have this preconceived notion of what these athletes, each athlete's capable of based on prior competition, based on open scores, quarterfinal scores, how they did in semifinals, how they did in prior seasons. We just know what their strengths and weaknesses are based on what they've showed us before. Now, anything that has happened prior to the one event at a time that they're going through at the CrossFit Games is meaningless. That's the beauty of sport, is that you have to show up and compete and execute each time. Somebody could just, for inexplicable reasons, not have the same level of energy that they thought they were going to have. Someone doesn't, they're going to crush the bike in this workout and they just aren't moving the bike fast. Maybe fatigue is built up from previous events. Maybe They're not sleeping good in their hotel they're underfed. Who knows? But all that matters is that you show up and that one chance you get for each event, you execute. And I think we just predetermine where people are going to fall based on previous performances. But previous performances do not matter. It's how you compete in the moment. James O'Rourke earlier was saying, sometimes the best team doesn't win the Super Bowl. That's maybe true, but on that day, they were the best team because they showed up and executed. The CrossFit Games are no different. That's how, well, I guess it has been different in some years because we've seen the fittest come through, right? We've seen Rich win multiple times. You've seen, Matt, Tia have these long stretches. Justin won a couple times. So we've seen it, even on the women's side. So we expect it, but it doesn't mean they're going to show up and execute. It does not mean that. Okay, so they have to every time, and nothing's given.
The methodology.
Where's the weightlifting? Sound like freaking Sporty Beth over here. Where's the weightlifting?
Your work potential, how do we know it or define it? We don't, but we know you have more than you have now.
Even if they had a man at 45 and a thing with a tire hammer.
And it's not a gimmick. These guys aren't good at CrossFit. They're really fucking fit. They're the fittest alive, period.
Let's imagine a world where they do have those workouts.
They're all going to have 300-pound snatches. They're all going to have 600-pound deadlifts. They're all going to run sub 5-minute miles.
Amanda 45, I think by itself would propel Dallin Pepper over James Sprague.
Okay, you cannot just speculate who's going to win what, right? You cannot. You may, again, assume based on previous experience somebody may have an advantage over somebody else, but you don't know. So he's saying, hey, maybe if this event was in there, maybe someone else wins. And maybe he's right. But guess what? The event wasn't in there, so we don't actually know. That's the problem with it, and that's how it's always been.
And I just
in
hope we
CrossFit.
don't look back and go, hey, we were sandbagging it. We were
You don't know what Dave
And
left
here's
out.
Fikowski a little
Dave
bit,
may have
Ben
left something
45,
out
but
to
I
help
do
someone
think
else.
The hammer tire is a good workout for him. He is the professor after all.
Again,
He's going to figure
just
that thing out better than everybody else.
speculating that Fikowski is going to hit a hammer to a tire better.
James Sprague is a god with the hammer.
He might have come in 30th.
Pepper first, Fikowski second, Sprague third. If you just put those two events in there, and I don't know what else happens on the leaderboard, but I do think about Patrick Vellner, who the further away he gets from a body of water, the more he climbs up the leaderboard. And with 2 more events, 200 more points on the table, maybe he's in the talk of the top 3. Maybe. If my aunt had a penis, she'd be my uncle.
You'll never find out.
Well, they were literally supposed to be there.
Thank you.
So shut up. You're wrong. I'm not saying I'm right, but I am saying that you can't say it's the fittest on earth. I want to make this to the point. Okay?
You still can. But you only can if you find the previous test also legitimate. If you don't think any of the tests find anyone the fittest on earth, then I agree. But again, a change, or I guess in this case, two events changing or being removed from the test does not meet some threshold that now the test is invalid. If there were definitions as to what we needed to test to find that, then maybe I would have. You can't just decide where the line in the sand is. You can't decide that. It didn't play out the way we expected going into the weekend, but a lot of times it doesn't. So you can invalidate everybody or nobody, but you can't pick and choose what you think is valid for a test.
One is leg day. When you cover distance, it's better to be taller.
Wow.
And then there's this tall light paradox where the lighter you are while also being tall, the better you will do. But everyone's about the same. For every inch taller you are, you put on about 10 pounds. And you got to do that to compete in the sport of fitness. So you're just left with height. If Colton Mertens beats Brent Fikowski on a lake day or an event like lake day where you got to go run 3.5 miles and then do an 800-meter swim, all freaking hell would break loose. It would freeze over. It would be incredible. That's just the way it is. He's got to take like an extra quarter step for every stride that Fikowski takes. It's by his birthright that Fikowski should be better. I'm not saying he didn't work to be good. It's the way of the world on that event in particular. And that is going to be the headspace I want you to take on these other events we're about to talk about. Firestorm. Yeah, 45 calories on the bike, which are not going to be offset by 33 burpees. So that's going to be an advantage to someone who's taller. Track and field. You're running around the track. I know Ricky took it, but you are still covering distance as you are on that second piece. I know it was a 100-point event, but there's nowhere for the 5'2" person to overcome the 6'2" person. I'm not saying there has to be here, but there has to be somewhere else. And there hasn't been to this point. Chad.
I mean, that's not even 100% true.
For someone who is this tall compared to someone who is this
short
tall.
people
Tell me you have small legs without telling me you have small legs.
Every step is easier the taller you are. And in this one, actually, the heavier you are too, because that backpack doesn't have as heavy of a percentage sitting on you. It weighs less pound per pound to the person, which is fine with this test. But for the test of fitness, at least historically, from everything we've come to believe through the Frasers and the Fronings and the Smiths and the Holmbergs and the Maderoses, through all of their requisite tests of fitness, we have seen and we have come to expect and we have been told that the test of fitness will indeed balance out. Clean ladder. Same freaking thing. Not similar to Lake Day where covering distance and being taller helps you inherently, and there can be a small, strong person who will do well. Same, but different, but kind of similar. Push pull, stupid. Freaking freestanding handstand. They ruined the push pull of 2014. I know where it was coming from, but everybody's different now. And this is literally a freestanding handstand.
I sort of agree with some of his breakdowns on these, to be honest.
An event like Lake Day. So we have one event so far that offsets all of these other ones on the taller athlete side. Dickies triplet, you're covering distance again. You're running advantage, height, and then the double final. Whole bunch of thrusters, whole bunch of chest to bar. This one is double advantage to the short man, a la Austin Hatfield. 2 victories. Now he's not short, 5'8", but he isn't 6'2". So there you go.
So I mean, yeah, I take some of his points that, taller athletes are advantaged in some workouts and shorter or in others, but that's how it's always been, right? That's how it is. And you could make arguments for some of the ones he was saying, like Firestorm. You can't overcome your calories with the burpee pace. I mean, you're not going to be that much slower that maybe you can. Like, it would be interesting to see where someone like a Colton Mertens placed on that, knowing he isn't going to have the same bike output as some of the bigger guys, but maybe his burpees actually do overcome, a good chunk of the field. I'm not saying he's going to win necessarily. And then he points out the mile. Like, Ricky's not a tall guy. He won the mile. He didn't get smoked by Jelly and Vikowski. He won the mile. Like, there are plenty of people of average or even shorter height that can run and take a ton of points. That same thing with a sprint. Yeah, Chad. Yeah, of course, there's height advantages there. Like, again, these are just different CrossFit Games workouts, and there are still, enough tests out here that the fittest should rise to the top, and it depends on how well they execute.
On the event finale, you have 2 events there. You have the handstand push-up one, but it's 5-3 there. Lake Day, track and field, Chad, clean ladder, Dickie's triplet. That's 5. And I suppose you could even chuck midlife.
All right, we'll take some of these comments because you guys are kind of killing it over here. Does the Lakers NBA bubble championship count? Yes, it does. It does. Do people talk about it like, oh, it's the bubble championship? They call it a Mickey Mouse championship. Every team was in the same circumstance and they came out on top. I hate the Lakers, by the way. I'm a Celtics fan. And I would still say, yeah, I mean, it's a legitimate banner. They were under the same situation as everybody else. Asymmetric years. Execution is a huge component. Maybe James had the performance of his life, but the point is he did. Exactly. That can be done. You could make that argument again back for Ben Smith. Maybe Ben Smith had the performance of his life the year he won and was labeled fittest on earth. Or you could argue, I'm not taking anything away from Ben. I think Ben's one of the greatest ever. But you could also argue, the programming came out just right. That last workout that Frazier just couldn't pick up those kettlebells on. If it was just a lighter set of kettlebells, Ben wouldn't have caught him. Matt would be the champion. He'd have a whole nother title. We wouldn't be talking about Ben anywhere near as much. But that's not what happened. They decided to go heavier. They decided to pick that weight, probably after testing a bunch of times. And what happened, and he earned the title. Let's keep going here. I wonder if Hiller would have the same opinion if those 2 events had to be canceled for another reason. Probably. I would say he probably would, but we'd have to ask him. By the way, I to be fair, I invited him to come on the show and have like a little healthy, fun little back and forth debate on this. But he was busy. He already had other plans. Otherwise, I fully expect he would have taken my challenge on. What else we got? Let's go through Clock's 2 comments here. Clock, I agree fully. Half of the way. Interesting way to start. I think CrossFit's concept of fitness isn't determined enough to say the absence of 2 events invalidates the test or that no heavy squat does so, etc. But there are parameters to a concept. A games full of nothing but running events would not be a good test of CrossFit's concept of fitness. That I can fully agree with, right? They wouldn't have made an attempt to balance. They wouldn't have done anything. And that kind of goes back to Hiller's first point in his video. You qualify the 80 people for the games, and then you have them go play a game of pool. Whoever wins the pool is the fittest. The test does matter to the extent that, we're trying to test as many components of fitness as possible across the weekend, right? The test does matter in that sense. But again, we just have accepted the tests in the past. The tests have never met a threshold of any kind. And I don't remember ever having this conversation when events in the past have been canceled, changed, movements changed, time, like any other change to the test or event. We haven't had this sort of discussion the way we've had it this year. And obviously it's easier to have this discussion this year. Again, emotions are still high with the whole weekend. People are still feeling everything that happened that weekend. So it's easier to just kind of like put stuff out there and have stronger feelings about stuff because we're all emotional about it. But even setting the tragedy aside, I mean, it's not maybe what Dave wanted the day that the game started. It's not what he wanted to play out in terms of events, but it's what played out, and it is enough workouts. It's way more than they tested at semifinals. It's probably as many workouts as, it's what, 9, 10 events, whatever it is, 10 events. It's almost twice as many scores as semifinals, close to it. And somebody came out on top, right? And somebody who is, we would all consider to be super legit. And then we have the argument about, Chad being advanced to a big guy, and then Gus with the heat over here. Hatfield got second on Chad. Hatfield's either the smallest, shortest, or one of the shortest athletes in the field, and he crushed it, right? He's also a good runner. So that takes away that argument about tall people having this massive advantage in running. It's sure they have longer limbs, but it ends there, the advantage. Let's see what else. Love Hiller and Hiller loves engagement. Yeah, I know that. I have no problem giving him extra eyes on this. Why does the fittest on earth have to be 5'9"? I agree. They don't have to be, and it just turns out that a handful of guys who have been the fittest specimens have been around that height, right? I think Frazier was shorter than that actually, and I think Froning might be even an inch taller than that. But yeah, I think that ended up being the average or something. But they don't have to be, right? They don't have to be. That's not the way it has to play out. Like if the final's different, let's say the final's different, Hiller makes the argument that for whatever reason he makes up that Fikowski is going to crush the tire sledgehammer sandbag workout. He just threw that in his argument. Fikowski's going to crush that workout. So you're going to give him more points over Sprague and Dallin for whatever reason he decided that. Let's say for any other reason, Dave decided that the final two workouts were going to be different than what they were. And Fikowski happens to have a slight advantage in those. And then he wins those workouts. Now we have a 6'2" CrossFit Games champion. And are we going to argue again? The tests are no good. No way Fikowski could win if the tests were balanced. Are we going to have that argument? Or are you going to say, damn, he crushed like all those events. He hung in places that we didn't expect a tall guy to do well in, and he still performed here, and he executed here, and he won the title. That's what you're going to have to say. Otherwise, you're just being a hater. Because again, you have to execute. Yeah, we are in love with thruster and pull-up races. It's so true. All right, we'll keep going. We're actually getting close to the end.
Climb into there as a 6 because you got all those ski calories. Power the machine for 100 calories. It's going to help out Jason Hopper. And then as far as the women go, I don't know. I know I've been very men heavy on this. I just don't think that there was enough weight. I think that when you put in the 70-pound dumbbell, when the men are using 100, they should be using an 80-pound
well, when you
dumbbell.
have Tia and Gabby Magala on top of the leaderboard, I think the test was pretty good. Those would have been 2 out of my top 3.
Show you mine.
This is all ridiculous.
I don't think it's fair to talk a whole bunch of crap if I'm not going to put my own butt on the line. I don't really want to go event by event here. It's going to take for freaking ever. But the things that I did,
he's going to anyway.
Day one. I hate when it's written in 2 different increments of measurement. Either write the distance of the swim.
So I'm going to skip ahead to his like final presentation here. He rewrites the CrossFit Games
because I do think that people were going to get freaking wrecked with that hammer. Maybe I'm wrong. You know that they had snails there for the team, so we're going to use the snail and then one double. It's 21:59.
So he rewrites the CrossFit Games into what he considers to be a more balanced test. Okay, so this leads me to another point. Hiller thinks he can do it better, and maybe he can. I'm not saying he can. Maybe he can. Maybe he's got such an eye for this that he thinks he can write a more well-rounded, balanced test for the fittest. Okay. I think it's possible I could do it too. I've been in the sport since 2009, attended more than 10 CrossFit Games. I've coached well over a dozen individuals, teams, others like to the games. I've written programming for competitors for 15 years. Maybe, just maybe, from my perspective, I can write a more balanced test. I'm not saying I can, but maybe I can. The point is, the test you get from Dave, the test you get from Andrew, the test you get from me, and the test you get from everyone else who has similar experiences to us, they're all going to be different. They're all going to have bias, and they're all not necessarily going to change who wins. In fact, more often than not, you're going to get the same winner, at least from previous experiences. Like you're going to get Tia that crushes all of our CrossFit Games no matter what. Andrew's version, Dave's version, Tia's still going to win, right? But when you have no standout on the guy side like we've had for this year, and even kind of last year, we've had a bunch of guys very similar in fitness who are competing to see who can execute the best across this weekend and earn the title fittest on earth. It doesn't matter whose test you're taking. You may have a different winner, but we've decided that we're gonna accept the test that's presented and crown the fittest. So Andrew's saying his test is more legit than Dave's. So if Andrew's test goes through and we use his, and even if the 2 events that got cut made it through all the way, Andrew now still thinks he can come up with a better test to crown the fittest. So let's say whoever, Dallin comes out on top in Andrew's test, and James comes out on top in my test, and Hopper comes out on top in whoever else's test. Like they all earned it equally, right? And we're not going to try to strip them of a title and say like we're not going to break down every detail and then argue for years about who wrote a better test between the 3 or 4 of us. Whose test was more legit? We don't do that. We do that, but we don't have any way to prove it. We actually argue about all that stuff all the time. We have no way to prove it because, again, there's no definition of it. There's no parameters of the test itself. It's just an accepted concept, and it changes. The target moves, and it's subject to opinion and bias. It always has been, and it probably always will be. if the PFAA has its way, the job is up for grabs. Yeah, I bet Brent would actually love to take it over and write it. I bet he wants Dave's job in some way. I don't actually know that, but I mean, who wouldn't want to be able to create the CrossFit Games? I guess, right? And someone else thinks they can do it better. Does that make their test more legitimate? Are we going to say the next fittest person is now the more legitimate fittest person on earth? We cannot. We have to accept that things change. I don't want to use the unknown and unknowable thing. It's like kind of overused a little bit, I think. But if you want to throw that in there, ripping two events away from the test is a little bit unknown and unknowable, right? You didn't know you were going to have a rest day or whatever. Like, you just have to accept the results.
And all of it's double.
Wow.
The women don't need to do less calories. Why? Because they're competing against the women in this event. So everybody can do 42 calories.
Where's my drink?
But don't even forget the fact that there was no rower in this entire competition.
What drink?
But every CrossFit gym everywhere across the planet has a rower, so we gotta put the rower in somewhere. Right. I mean, you put a ski in there, you put the echo bike in there. Why not put the freaking rower in there?
Don't tell me you forgot my drink.
Here it is, the rower. And then we have 30 bar muscle ups, which is 3 less than Dave had programmed.
Honestly, he makes a good,
and then you have
good
these 18
CrossFit Games.
The M135 for the men, 95
Props
for
to
the
him
women.
for
And
that.
for all of this crap, that's going to be fun to watch finish. You're
Pretty
gonna go 6,
cool
and then
test,
you're gonna go 6,
actually.
And then you're going to go 6, and everyone's going to be, oh my God, they're going to hang on to the final set of thrusters. That's still going to be a great finale. And the biggest change there is the rower. How bad do you want it? If you've ever done like a row chest bar or a row bar muscle up workout, that is going to melt your soul. I actually went event by event. Told you I wouldn't do that. Whatever. The reason I haven't done this video to date, or many videos to date, is because of the stuff that I said in the last video that I put up. Thursday happened, and then I just wanted to say nothing mattered. I was watching the CrossFit Games a little different. I'm like, this doesn't matter. Like, that doesn't matter. None of this matters. But the thing that did matter,
We all
to me
felt
is the
that
name
way
of
a
the
little
fittest
bit.
on earth.
James Sprague is the fittest man on earth. He's now made a way to becoming the fittest on earth.
From teen athlete to the fittest on earth.
And I think it matters to a lot of people. I think that there's clearly something that is going to be remembered from the 2024 CrossFit Games. That's going to be event 1, and it's going to be the tragic passing of Lazar.
Didn't mean to pause it right there, but why is a rower a key piece of fitness equipment though? Because we decided it was early, or Greg decided it was early on, right? He wrote CrossFit Journal articles about it early. It got adopted to all the affiliates as the main machine we would use in workouts from the start. So we have now just, for whatever reason, accepted that that is an important thing to test. Is it a great test of fitness? Yeah, hell yeah, it is. But I'm just saying that kind of also lends to my point. You're right. Why is that a key thing to test? Why? What makes it that way? We've accepted that it is a key thing to test, and we've accepted that we're going to use it in our training and it produces results, which we know that it does. So again, this is just concepts that we accept as true and are willing to use. Oh, sorry. Yeah, he probably does answer it.
And a distant second to that is going to be the Liver King-esque solelying of the claim of the test
I
of
answered it
fitness.
too, I
This
guess.
isn't just an asterisk. It's the fact that when you argue for it, it makes you look ridiculous. I now know what people were looking at when I tried to get people on the Liver King train. You know, it just popped.
All right, so I'm arguing for it. I don't know if I'm ridiculous or if I'm just explaining a concept that's not often thought about, in the sense that you cannot get a perfect test of fitness, and you cannot even legitimize what we do as a test to find the fittest on earth. Does the test resemble our methodology and what we're looking for across different different domains, different everything? Like, does it cover everything in some capacity? Yeah, sure, it does. We've accepted that it does, and we've accepted over the years that we need to actually add to the test to test more, to make it more complete, right? Because that's the only reason we'd add volume, I would assume. Otherwise, we could just keep it a 5-test, 2-day thing and be done quick. But we've made it more and more grueling to find the fittest. And whoever comes out at the end on top, when we say stop, this is the last test, we've decided it's the last test, stop, that person gets the crown. That's what they did this year. They cut those tests out, and they decided that the 2 finals that they had originally were enough to say stop, hit the buzzer, stop it. That's going to be the winner after that. That decision was made just like other decisions were made. The decision that was going to be the final event, or the finale, to crown the fittest, was made. Are there other factors that went into the decision making? Yeah, there's so many countless factors that go into the decision to make all the tests every year, every season. The decision was made by people who we've accepted to make these decisions. They hit stop after the final, and they award fittest on earth. If we can't accept that, then we can't legitimize what's been done every year prior. We've accepted all those other tests. We don't know about what's been cut before it got to the stage. It could have been a day before or the weekend of. Dave goes out there and tests stuff. You don't know if he pulled a piece off that was supposed to start another piece before that. You could go interview all the demo team athletes and see how much shit got changed or cut because it didn't play out the way they thought in person. you'd probably be shocked. I know many of them, and I've heard stories after the fact. I just don't see how you can decide that this is now your line in the sand, unless you have a line in the sand that you can define that you have not defined in this video, because you haven't explained a threshold that needs to be tested. You have not.
Positive, and I'm like, but he was doing it for his family. I'm like, oh, that's why everyone thinks I look ridiculous. And it's very similar here. When you argue that this is a complete, or James Sprague is the fittest on earth, it's like, are you out of your freaking mind? As someone
No,
who
I'm
is
not.
entrenched and ingrained into the CrossFit world, I've never used this statement. I see the statement, and I'm like, you don't get it, but drink the Kool-Aid. That's a Kool-Aid drinking statement. And the final and the best analogy that I think I had to all of it.
Now for one of Magic's most basic tricks.
There was a magician on stage.
Pulling a rabbit out of a hat.
Like, where'd he get it?
Nothing up his sleeve. The hat is empty.
But there's 2 rabbits.
He tosses it into the air to show you that the rabbit isn't hidden inside.
Or 1 hat with no rabbit. Now everyone knows the trick.
When the magician picks up the hat, he also picks up the rabbit and puts it inside. The hat goes up, and in goes the rabbit.
And like the 2024 CrossFit Games, hearing people defend this as the test of fitness throws the biggest wrench into it ever. And you might as well have just had an email exposed where you buy $10,000 worth of growth hormone a month.
And there you have it. Just that simple.
$11,000 per month for my new dose, which is 4 vials per week.
This will be the sword that I fall on. You will never be able to change my mind on this. And
I'll never be able to change his mind. That's probably.
good luck trying. Andrew Heather,
Oh,
out.
there we go. So there it is. There's his video. No, I probably won't be able to change his mind. There's probably no chance I change his mind on this. But I would have to, before I could ever go down that road with him and say this is not legitimate, it's not an acceptable test, you're going to have to show me what needs to be tested to be considered acceptable. You're going to have to go back and take all the details of all the games that have ever been changed, day of, week before, month before, at the first day it's written on a whiteboard in Dave's house, and tell me when the final product has to be done and when or what has to be tested. Like, what is the parameter? Until you can do that, you can't just decide that now this doesn't count at the end. So, yeah, you're right. It's arbitrary. It's all arbitrary. The whole thing, the test of fitness, as we've defined it, is arbitrary. Exactly right. We've just accepted it. And I'm fine with accepting it because we're the only ones that test this broad array of things. There's no other sport, there's no other test that does this. Not even a decathlon is this varied, right? So I'm fine with it based on CrossFit's definition. But the test of what needs to be done to hand over the crown is not defined. It's just defined by what we accept each and every year and have accepted each and every year as the CrossFit Games. And we completed the CrossFit Games this year in another arbitrary test that we've decided ended with those 2 last workouts. James came out on top. James now gets the title of the fittest on earth. I'll fall on that sword, Andrew. All right, guys, anything else before I wrap up today? You guys were fantastic in the comments. Thank you for asking questions and giving your feedback. They changed it to fit the ESPN scheduling. Yeah, they change tests every year to fit that, right? They change this every year. Tests don't play out the way they think they're going to play out if the setup changes when they get to the venue, if something like they just don't know, or the demo team's testing these events, and maybe we know there's definitely an element of fatigue that the demo team is probably not feeling when they test these events for Dave, right? So an event that's scheduled to be done on day 3 of the CrossFit Games might be tested by 2 demo team athletes at the ranch on the first day being at the ranch, and they give Dave scores, and they don't anticipate how much tougher that test is going to be after the accumulation of volume over the weekend, right? And so they test it, and they go, "Shit, this is different than we thought. We're gonna pivot here. We're gonna change the test again for the 8th time." Yeah, solo pod, kind of. Actually, it was kind of me and Andrew. I just played Andrew's video and gave my feedback, disagreeing. Ooh, there are parameters we accept. What are those parameters? Or are you saying we just accept what the CrossFit Games gives us each year? Do you have a definition of what we accept that I don't know? That would be mind-blowing to me. CrossFit. Baseball games will count 7 innings if weather goes bad. Still counts. Yep. Correct. Gus, the Hopper method is a method of defining fitness by the L1. Yeah, it's one of them. Yeah, it's one of the ways we define fitness. Basically saying you pull a bunch of random shit out of the hopper and the CrossFitter will have a better success rate versus other specialists. So like a runner, a lifter, whatever. If you pull enough things out of the hopper, eventually the CrossFitter will always rise to the top on an average finish, so to speak. I just butchered that, but that's the gist of it. If the hopper pulled the test, it would tell us who the fittest is. Yeah, as part of the definition, right? If you had enough, so I think that concept, more so has to be into infinity though, right? Because let's say let's say there's 100,000 tests in this hopper, so to speak. Okay. And we're deciding we're going to take 10 and we crank the hopper and we pull it out. And the first test is 5K run. Second test is 6K run. By some mathematical anomaly, if the test is super biased in one direction in a short sample size, I mean, yeah, you're going to have to keep going with it. And if you want to use that argument for the games, though, then you can never define the end of the games. That's the problem, right? We just put an end to it. We define that there's an end. We decide it's going to end here. So you could do the same thing with a hopper, but it would be, I don't want to say less accurate, but there is, at least they try to put some thought about balancing tests and testing enough different components between monostructural, weightlifting, and gymnastics, right? If you got to test a little bit of all that to at least even talk about becoming a legitimate test. But again, no hard definition on how much of each would have to be done because we don't know. We define fitness and the parameters around that are what we generally accept, I should have said. Oh, yes. So I think we're on the same page then, if I read that correctly. CrossFit. Does Dave need to have a more balanced group of athletes in the demo team? 5 or 6 were little persons. I mean, it could help, right? It certainly couldn't hurt to have a more balanced approach on those workouts. The more information you get, the better off your decisions can be, right? It'll never be perfect. And it'll always be a moving target. But yeah, more balance is better. Joanna Love, we have to accept James won as the fittest, period. Right. Yep, I agree. That's my entire point. And if we don't accept James this year as the fittest, then you can't accept any of them. He won under the same parameters everybody else has won under. Different circumstances, but every year the games has different circumstances. Every year. Asymmetric years. Actually, by definition, the fittest on earth is subjective. Thus, the conversation never ends. Engagement level high. Yeah. I didn't plan to do this podcast to try to jack up my engagement or anything. I just literally, I don't know why I have a bug up my ass today. And I listened to Hiller's thing and I was just like, man, I couldn't possibly have a different outlook on the results of this than he had. And he was fired up, which fired me up to go in the opposite direction. So I just decided to do the show last second. I really would have liked to discuss this with Andrew. I think we would have had an excellent conversation about it. I hope he may go back and watch, and then maybe we can go back and forth on it. Clock, you get a very different test every year if the games was a finite hopper test. Yep. Good morning, Heidi. We're almost done. But thank you for jumping in. Appreciate it. Guys, I'll do that selfish thing where I ask anyone who maybe hasn't subscribed yet to just click subscribe, maybe like as well. Just hook me up. 2 seconds. We'll go through a few more comments and I'll wrap it up. CrossFit. Eli Manning won 2 Super Bowls. Were those Giants the best teams or performed the best given the timing? Yeah. I mean, based on the test the NFL uses, the Giants ended up being the best team. Were they the best regular season team? Was Eli the best quarterback all year long? No. But did they perform when it counted to win? To be the best? Yeah. And so, that's maybe part of our definition of fittest on earth. Again, that definition, we like to pretend that it's like a concrete definition, like our what is fitness definition. We have a good grasp on it. But again, how much you have to test to be considered fittest is completely ambiguous. We don't know. All right, what else we got? Oh, thank you, Kenneth. I demand James be certified as the fittest on earth. And apparently Heidi just certified him. So well done, Heidi. You're welcome for the show. Jeffrey Birchfield, what's happening? We're just wrapping up, but thank you for popping in. Yeah, I agree. Best thing James can do is repeat to validate his outcome. And it's possible, right? But also we know I mean, I'm impressed with James. I think he's got a bright future, but he didn't have a dominating Matt or Rich performance in this first year of winning. If he does it again and he wins, he starts to separate from the field, like I'll, think that he's going to be one of those guys. But he's, in my opinion, one of the guys at the top of the pack who just happened to have the best weekend of all of them. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like, man, I wish I could say that like once ever. Yep. Thank you, Heidi. Thank you for subscribing. Zach, thanks for commenting. You're welcome. So I did try to, I invited Andrew, even sent him the link. He's already occupied. He's got stuff going on tonight. If I gave him more notice, which I had no way of doing, he probably would have come on. And maybe we will do a little follow-up. Maybe we can have a fun little argument, him and I, just for fun. What else we got? Yep. James and Tia were the best on this given weekend. Yeah. And so that makes them fittest on earth, because that is our test across that weekend, the way we define it. Geez, that's very nice of you. Is it too soon for dark humor? I'm a major dark humor kind of guy. I just usually leave it off the internet, but yeah. Okay, guys. Thank you so much for popping in on short notice. I'll be back. I got like 3 shows next week too. All kinds of different people coming on. I'm pretty pumped about it. So yeah, thanks for subscribing. Turn your notifications on. I'll try to post them up early, but yeah, we'll talk to you guys soon. See ya.